All right, gardeners, hold up. I've got something big to share with you today. Imagine this, a cheap, everyday item that cost me less than $1. And it completely outperformed every fancy fertilizer I've ever used. Yup, you heard that right. You know all those high-end fertilizers that promise lush, healthy plants with a price tag that makes you wonder if it's worth it? Well, turns out, you don't need to spend big to get big results. So here's the thing. If you're like me, you've probably tried every fancy fertilizer on the market. You know, the ones that claim to be scientifically formulated with cutting-edge technology or packed with micronutrients for the healthiest, most vibrant plants. I spent years experimenting with different brands, trying everything from organic to synthetic, liquid to granular, and I thought I had it all figured out. But despite following all the instructions, spending all that money, and putting in so much effort, my plants didn't really flourish like I expected. Sound familiar? I mean, don't get me wrong, they grew. They were green, they were alive, but they weren't thriving. The leaves weren't as vibrant as I hoped, the flowers weren't as plentiful as promised, and some plants were just, well, stuck. Even after all that money and time, I kept feeling like I was missing something. And that's when I got fed up. I wanted to get the best results without breaking the bank. So, I started looking for alternatives. At this point, I was desperate. I even started Googling cheap gardening hacks. I mean, who hasn't, right? And that's when I found this little-known trick that didn't come with any fancy labels or expensive marketing. It was simple, cheap, and something most of us already have lying around the house. I was skeptical, but I thought, why not? What's the worst that could happen? A little extra green in my garden? So I gave it a shot, and here's the thing. It completely changed my plants. I'm not just talking about a slight difference. I'm talking about vibrant growth, thick, healthy leaves, and flowers blooming like crazy. The results were fast, too. Like, within just a few days, I saw my plants looking healthier, stronger, and more vibrant than ever before. It was like they were thanking me for finally giving them what they needed. No joke. And I know you're wondering, what is this miracle item? Is it some secret gardening hack the pros don't want you to know about? Well, I'm about to tell you. But first, let me make something clear. I didn't go out and buy some magical plant food that costs a fortune. Nope. This item was dirt cheap and easy to find. It's something so basic that it almost sounds too good to be true. But trust me, after seeing the results, I'm convinced it's one of the best kept secrets in the gardening world. You're going to want to hear this. Trust me, your plants will thank you for it. So, let's rewind a bit and talk about the real struggle I faced before discovering this game-changing trick. Like many of you, I've always been on the hunt for the perfect fertilizer. I mean, it's almost like a rite of passage for any gardener, right? You find yourself standing in the aisle at your local gardening store, staring at rows and rows of fertilizers, each promising bigger, healthier, faster-growing plants. You know the ones I'm talking about, the ones with flashy labels, bold claims, and words like premium formula, high performance, and organic power. You've probably been there too. Now, let me be real for a second. I was sucked in by all the hype. I thought, okay, if I spend more money, I'll get better results. So, I didn't hesitate to pick up the most expensive fertilizers I could find. I bought liquid fertilizers, granular ones, slow-release options. You name it, I tried it. The packaging had me convinced this was the miracle I'd been waiting for. Feed your plants this, and you'll see lush, vibrant growth like never before. Who wouldn't be excited about that, right? But here's the kicker. While I did follow all the instructions to a T, I never got the jaw-dropping results I was promised. Sure, my plants grew. They didn't die or anything, but they didn't thrive either. They were green, yes, but they looked, well, kinda average. Nothing special. And you know what? I kept thinking that maybe it was me. Maybe I wasn't doing something right. I followed the directions. I gave them the exact amount of fertilizer. I watered them at the right time. I gave them sunlight. I was basically on plant mom dad level 100. But after months of using these expensive fertilizers, I was getting really frustrated. Why weren't my plants growing faster? Why weren't they producing more flowers, more fruits, more leaves? I was dumping money into these products and wasn't getting the results I had hoped for. And honestly, it started to feel like a waste of time and money. I even started questioning if it was the plants themselves. Maybe I just didn't have a green thumb after all. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Ever felt like that? Like you've invested so much into something, and no matter what you do, you're just not getting the results you want? Well, that's where I was. And after a few months of constant disappointment, I reached a breaking point. I needed something better. I needed something that actually worked. I couldn't just keep blindly following the advice of expensive products that didn't seem to do much of anything. It was like my plants were on a growth diet. They were surviving, but not thriving. And that's when I made a bold decision. I was done with the fancy fertilizers. I was ready to try something different. So I started researching alternative ways to boost plant growth. I scoured forums, read articles, and even asked a few seasoned gardeners. And while I wasn't ready to give up on gardening completely, I was ready to find something that worked without breaking the bank. And that's when I found the simple, no-fuss solution. Something that didn't come in a shiny bottle with a high price tag. But first, I needed to give it a shot. I needed to test it on my own plants before I could recommend it. Now, I know you're probably dying to know what this magical cheap item is. And trust me, I'll get to that in just a second. But first, let me just say this. Gardening shouldn't have to be this complicated. You don't need a $1,000 budget to grow healthy, vibrant plants. And this is where everything changed for me. All right, enough of the build-up. Let's get to the good part. What exactly did I try, and how did it transform my garden? Stay tuned, because you won't believe what happened next. Okay, so here's the moment you've all been waiting for. After all that frustration with expensive fertilizers, I needed to find something that actually worked. I wasn't going to just accept the mediocrity I was getting from the fancy stuff. I was determined to give my plants the best possible care, but without spending a fortune. So, I turned to the simplest solution I could find, something that was sitting right in my kitchen the whole time: baking soda. Yep, you heard that right. Baking soda. The same stuff you use for cleaning, baking, or even deodorizing your fridge. But it turns out this humble household item is a total powerhouse when it comes to gardening. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Baking soda? Really? What's it going to do? Make my plants taste better? I had my doubts too. I mean, how could something so cheap and simple beat all those premium fertilizers I'd been using for months? But the more I read about it, the more I realized that baking soda is like a secret weapon in the gardening world. And after hearing about its potential, I decided, why not? What did I have to lose at this point? So I started experimenting with it in small doses. I mixed just a teaspoon of baking soda into the soil, carefully following some advice I'd found online about its pH balancing properties. Turns out, plants love having their pH balanced, and baking soda can help neutralize acidic soils. If your soil is too acidic, your plants struggle to absorb the nutrients they need, and that's where a little baking soda can work wonders. It essentially helps make your plant's environment more ideal for growth. But that wasn't all. Baking soda also helps with a ton of other plant issues. It has antifungal properties, so it can prevent common issues like powdery mildew. It's also a natural pest repellent. Goodbye to those annoying aphids and other little critters that were starting to invade my plants. Just a little sprinkle, and I noticed a significant reduction in pests without having to use harsh chemicals. Now, let's talk about the results. After a few days of using this simple, cheap hack, I began noticing changes. At first, it was subtle. I thought maybe I was just imagining things, but then I saw it. My plants were growing faster. The leaves became more vibrant, a rich, deep green, and I even noticed my flowers starting to bloom more profusely. Within just a week, the difference was undeniable. The plants that were once stagnant and average were now flourishing, strong, healthy, and full of life. It was honestly like a light bulb moment. Why had I spent all that money on expensive fertilizers, when something as simple as baking soda could give me better results? I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some great fertilizers out there, but sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones. And this little bag of baking soda? It was doing what all those fancy brands couldn't do. At that point, I started using baking soda more regularly, just a little bit mixed into the soil or sprinkled around the base of the plants. The changes kept coming. I was blown away. My plants were growing stronger, their roots were healthier, and they just looked more vibrant. All of this for less than $1. It felt like I had unlocked some sort of gardening cheat code. So, I know you're dying to see the before and after shots, and trust me, I'll get to that. But before I do, let me just say this. If you're tired of wasting money on fancy fertilizers that don't deliver, this cheap, simple solution might be just what you need. Stay tuned for the proof. It's coming up next. Alright, here we go. Let's get to the good stuff. The proof that this cheap little hack actually works. I know you're all wondering, does baking soda really make a difference? Well, I'm here to tell you that the results speak for themselves. After using it for just a few weeks, my garden completely transformed, and I'm so pumped to share it with you. First off, let's take a look at the plants before I started using baking soda. They were decent. They weren't dying, but they weren't thriving either. My tomato plants were just kind of meh. The leaves weren't as green as I wanted, and they were growing very slowly. My flowers were a little dull, and I had a few plants with spots of powdery mildew starting to form. You know the type, the kind that looks like they might be on the verge of dying, but they're hanging on by a thread. Yeah, those kinds of plants. But fast forward to a few days after using the baking soda, and let me tell you, everything started changing. My tomato plants? They exploded with growth. The leaves turned a vibrant shade of green, and they started growing faster than ever. I swear, it felt like I could watch them grow in real time. Within just a week, I was already seeing new, healthy shoots pop up. The blooms? They were fuller, the fruits started to set, and I could tell that the plants were just happier. They were thriving. My flowers too looked completely different. The petals were brighter, and the blooms were way more abundant. The powdery mildew that had been slowly creeping up on my leaves? Gone. Just completely gone. I didn't have to use any harsh chemicals or sprays, just that tiny bit of baking soda, mixed into the soil or sprinkled around the plants, worked wonders. I have to say, I wasn't expecting such dramatic results from something so simple. You see, that's the beauty of gardening. You don't always need expensive, complicated solutions to get the results you want. Sometimes nature's best answers are right in front of you. And this little trick with baking soda proved that to me. It balanced the soil pH, helped combat fungal problems, and even repelled pests, all for less than $1. You seriously can't beat that. And you know what? It wasn't just my tomato plants and flowers that improved. My entire garden started thriving. The soil became healthier, the plants were growing stronger, and everything just looked more vibrant. Even the plants that were struggling before started coming back to life. The peppers, the herbs, even the houseplants. Everything flourished like I'd just given it a secret boost that they were waiting for. I know a lot of you are probably thinking, okay, I'm sold. I need to try this. And honestly, you should. If you're looking for a cost-effective, natural way to boost your plant's health, I can't recommend it enough. I mean, when it comes to gardening, it's all about finding what works best for you. And sometimes, the simplest solutions end up being the best. Before I wrap up, I just want to remind you, if you're tired of wasting money on fancy fertilizers that don't deliver, don't be afraid to think outside the box. Go grab some baking soda, give it a try, and see for yourself what a difference it can make. I promise you, your plants will thank you. So, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more awesome gardening tips. Drop a comment below if you've ever tried something unexpected in your garden that worked wonders. I love hearing from all of you. Thanks so much for watching, and happy gardening.